let's go back into an animal that we were working on Thursday last. And I also want to have our shorthand version of our rules up. So tell me if you don't see those. I should be. I hope I'm sharing the right screen with you. Okay, so do you guys remember on Thursday we had worked through one derivation, so one version of a proof for the argument either A is large or it's a small tet. It's not the case that A is small or it's not a tet or it's a dodeck. And then the conclusion, therefore, A is large or it's a dodeck, right? So recall that we worked through that. We set up several frameworks, right? So structuring subproofs to pursue the conclusion. And we worked through, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, we worked through the disjunction elimination where we used line 2 as our structuring subproof. So what I have here now, as you can see when I slide on down to line 8, what I have now is the other disjunction elimination subproof setup, right? So it's starting with line 1, either A is large or it's a small tet. I said, okay, well, let me assume A is large, and then the conclusion of the argument is the conclusion of my subproof. Then I move on to the right side of the disjunction at line 1. I say, okay, let me assume that A is a small tet, and what I want from that, again, from that side, is the conclusion. And then the conclusion is asserted currently at line 8, right? So if I can derive the conclusion from either side of the disjunction at line 1, it means that in either case I have the conclusion, right? So let's walk through this and then see what sorts of questions you might have. I want to make sure too that if I need to, I can see the chat in case a question comes up that you want to ask via chat. But remember, don't be shy about just piping up, right? Because I can't always see you. Like I can't see your name, or if you're showing yourself, obviously I can't see your face in the same way that I can when we're in the classroom together. So yell at me if I'm just yammering on and you have a question. Okay, so I hope it makes sense that from line 3, we get line 4, which is the introduction of the disjunction. That completes the left side, right, of the disjunction at line 1, the elimination of that disjunction. Now we're moving on to the right side. Notice, though, that it doesn't seem obvious how we're supposed to get to the disjunction that is our concluding sentence, right, from the assumption that A is a small tet. But remember, we're going to have to address line 2, right? So what we did in the setup last week was, remember that the 3 subproof sequence using line 2 as our structuring disjunction. But now now we're using line 1, but we still need to address line 2. So what if we do this? We say, okay, I now have line 7 as my conclusion. I'm going to assume that A is not small. And what do I want from that? I want the conclusion. Or actually, we could probably, yeah, well, let's just leave it at that. I want the conclusion A is large or a dodeck, right? And then I exit out of that subproof, begin the next subproof, and hold on for half a second because I need to make the font smaller because I'd like to get the whole derivation in a single window so that you don't have to scroll up and down to see what we're doing. Then we move on to, it's not the case that A is a tet. And once again, we want the conclusion A is either large or a dodeck. And then finally, we assume A is a dodeck, and we want A is large or A is a dodeck. And I'll go ahead and make the font just a little bit smaller. So let me know if that's hard for you to see. Okay, so before moving on, I want to say what it is that I've done to get back out onto the line that began at 5, the sequence rather, that began at line 5 and ended at line 14. I'm saying disjunction elimination from 2, 6 through whatever the line number is, at present 9 through whatever the line number is, and at present 12 through whatever the line number is. I say at present because we don't know how many more lines we'll need to generate. And I'm saying that I've set up disjunction elimination, right? Now, let's go back up to the top here, the top being that nested subproof sequences first inference. So take a look at 5 and 6. 5 and 6 right now offer me an implicit contradiction. I'm going to make it explicit by eliminating the conjunction from line 5. Check to make sure I've done that right. Yes, I have. Yay. Now notice that 6 and 7 are contradictories. So we say that. Check that step. I know that I want the conclusion of the sequence and that I can assert it because I eliminate at line 9, I eliminate the contradiction at line 8. Right? From a contradiction, anything follows. Now I'm done with this sequence, or first part of the sequence. Now I move on to the second part. Once again, there's an implicit contradiction. I'm going to make it explicit by eliminating the conjunction at line 5. Once again, asserting the contradiction. At line 12 from lines 10 and 11. And again, eliminating the contradiction from line 12 at line 13. And let's see if I have room to pull this down. Nah. I don't want to make the font too small because then it'll be really hard to see. And then finally, now I move on to the last, the rightmost disjunction from line 2. Right, so here's line 2, here's the sequence 6 through 9, 10 through 13, and now 14 to 15 is simply the introduction of the disjunction from line 14. Go ahead and check that guy off, right? And now I'm in a position to see if I've done everything right, because remember, at the very beginning, I set up the structuring and substructuring sequences so that by the time I got there, if I had forgotten what I was doing, I'm reminded. I just look at my citations and justifications, and I hit the verify proof button, and I see, yep, we've got everything correct. Or we see that everything is correct, sorry. Now, take a moment, if you would, to look at this proof in connection with the relevant rules and tell me what you're thinking. If you have any question about what's been done. One of the things you're going to notice, if you haven't already, is it's one thing to follow along and say, I see what you're doing, right? It's another thing to generate the derivation yourself. So one of the issues that arises, this almost invariably for us, is we say, oh man, everything was going great. I was following along. And then, I went to go work a proof myself and I just didn't know where to begin. Or I set things up, but then I didn't know what to do. Those are the two most common issues that arise. If that has already happened to you, do you want to share what you were working on so that we can work through that together? Or do you want to talk about what's bugging you, so that we can either talk about the strategies, right, that we have, and tactics. And I'm thinking of strategies in terms right now, in terms of our two subproof rules, that is disjunction elim and negation intro. And then our tactical rules are those short sequences that don't involve a subproof.
I have a question, Professor.
Tell me, and sorry, hold on just a sec. I want to see, why is this, okay. Ha ha. Dereje, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Okay.
On line 4,
Yes.
before that, we're supposed to introduce conjunction elimination in order to get a dodec by itself, just like number 3.
So let's adjust the language you're using, and then tell me if I understand you correctly. Line 4 involves the introduction of a disjunction, right? So if A is large, it follows that A is large or whatever else it is we want to say.
Yeah, but before that, we have to put it by itself, and then introduce elimination on 2.
Okay, so line 3 starts an elimination of the disjunction at line 1.
Yes.
Yes. Then within the second elimination, that is within the elimination of the right side of the disjunction at 1, we've got the conjunction A is a small tet. I apologize because I don't think I'm addressing your issue.
Does the conjunction type matter? Like, is it and or like those have difference when you introduce elimination? Like, for example, you just put large on 3, large A.
Yes.
On line 3.
Yes.
Because is the main connect.
Right. So the main connective at line 1, I've highlighted it. It's in gray right now, and I'm circling it with my cursor. The main connective at line 1 is a disjunction. The left side of the disjunction is just the atomic sentence, A is large. The right side of that disjunction is the parenthetical, right? That's the conjunction.
Okay, but if you want to get tet A, you have to introduce elimination, right?
Oh, I see. Forgive me. Yes, if you want, so now let's look at line 5. If you want to get A is small on its own and A is a tet on its own, so let me go back to our rule sheet. Oopsie. Hold on. Here we go. If we want to go back to our rule sheet, what we see is that we have to pull down whichever of the conjuncts we want. So notice that, so correct me if I'm either going a far afield of what you want or I'm not addressing your question. When we
No, that's fine.
eliminate the conjunction, there's no assumption we have to make. We just split that. We pull the conjunct that we want.
Okay.
Right? Am I addressing your question?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to know the difference between the or and conjunction. Like you like took large A as it is and put it on number 3. Like if it is because it's the main conjunctive is like or.
Yes.
That's the reason.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
so what we had to do, so take a look at line 1, take a look at disjunction elimination. So pretend that the sentence in the rule sheet is our sentence, namely an atomic sentence on the left side of the disjunction, and on the right side it's a compound sentence. We assume the left side, and it doesn't matter what the sentence is, it happens to be the atomic sentence A is large. And then on the right side, for the rule form, Q is any sentence, right? It happens to
Okay.
be, in this case, the sentence A is a small tet. So we've got the conjunction.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course, of course.